All right, guys, we're back. Happy Martin Luther King Day. Let me see if I can fix my camera here. There we go. And we got a lot of, actually, kind of a big change for Division II. We're going to talk about here in a second. As I try to fix one of these things. So, guys, obviously we're getting closer and closer to the college baseball season starting. The D2 top 25 also came out, so we're going to go over that as well. Because again, I've tried to tell you guys since we started this. Canes, what's up, man? Good afternoon. Happy spring baseball day. You're right. Spring baseball, man. And I may try to, who knows, guys? I may try to do like a live stream for maybe go to a Georgia Tech practice. This week it'd be tough, unless I could use one of their indoor facilities or one of their boxes or the Champions Hall, because it's going to be practice for teams in Georgia and anywhere north of Georgia is going to be tough this week. I mean, this morning it was 17 degrees in Atlanta, so it's going to be tough. Weather is cold outside. Ooh. We may have some interesting, we also have some interesting information from D1 baseball as well. So we're going to get into that. So big D2, big news D2. We're going to go over that. We're going to go over the D2 top 25 because I want you guys to understand that Division II, I think in a lot of people's minds, is not as good as it is. Unless you have a son or someone that's played at that level, especially at the higher levels of D2. I mean, a lot of these teams are really good, can compete, are better than a lot of Division I teams. So we'll get into that top 25 and talk about some of the programs that we've worked with and have sent a lot of guys to. And then we'll also discuss an interesting article from D1 baseball as well. Zach, afternoon, ready for some snow in Florida tomorrow? Yeah, it's supposed to. I mean, Zach, where is it supposed to snow in Florida? I'm guessing up in like the Jacksonville area, kind of the Panhandle, North Florida. It's potentially going to snow here as well. It's just crazy how cold it is going to be this week. I mean, if I'm looking at the weather right now, if I pull this up, it's 28 degrees right now at 2 o'clock in Georgia. So, I mean, it's freezing for Georgia standards. Tomorrow, it's going to be a low of 17. Wednesday will be a low of 15. It won't get above 40 until Friday, or actually until Saturday. And even then, it'll be high of 48, 45, and 47 on the weekend. So, Panhandle, Panama City, yeah, that'll be crazy if it actually snows down there. But yeah, just freezing cold. So, all right, guys, let's get into this D2. Some of the D2 changes here. Let me zoom in so you guys will be able to read this. We're going to go over a couple of the tweets from D2 Baseball's Twitter account. So here we go. Just baseball here. JUCO baseball here starts Friday. Supposed to be in the 30s for the game Friday. Yeah, JUCO's about to start. D2 starting in I think 12 days. So everything is starting here really soon. So here we go. First tweet. The NCAA has approved supplemental distribution to Division II schools, a total of approximately $2.2 million. Of that figure, roughly $8,000 will go to those eligible schools. So not a huge number, but again, $8,000 to these schools. So NCAA is trying to give some of this settlement money to Division II. Again, this is not a huge thing, but better than nothing, I guess. But here's the real news. If I can find it right. Okay, here we go. Recent news passing with NCAA Division II as some new rules are in place. Most notably, a student athlete in their first year of collegiate enrollment may play up to 30% of a team's games and not use a season of eligibility. So, In my mind, this is the NCAA Division II getting ahead of what could be coming with JUCO eligibility stuff. Obviously, if the JUCO players get 1 year of eligibility that doesn't count, or 2 years, this is going to be nowhere near enough. But this allows for freshmen who don't get like a lot of playing time, but seriously, 30% is a good amount, right? Allows them to keep a year of eligibility if they're a guy that has to be used late in the season, but ultimately didn't get to play much. They don't burn a year of eligibility. So again, this makes it just better for a player who is kind of used sparingly and then would ultimately, in the past, burn up a year of eligibility. Will this apply to a kid who's a junior now that only played 20% of his games his freshman year? As of this moment, no. So this only applies for future guys, is what it looks like. It's not a you don't get grandfathered into this. Basically meaning this has to be your first year of collegiate enrollment. So it's not like, oh, you got medical redshirted and then your second year you only playing 30% of the games. This has to be your first year of collegiate enrollment. So ultimately, it's not going to affect a whole lot of guys, but it is a step kind of in the direction that Division II needs to go in order to compete with JUCO, if that becomes kind of the law of the land, right? If junior college all of a sudden, if the way things are going and what we think will happen at the junior college level happens, D2 has to start taking steps toward eligibility issues with them. Again, the thing that the Division II has not going for it is it is a part of the NCAA, so the NCAA is going to have to grant it, whereas junior college is, again, separate, so it can kind of govern itself and make up its own rules per se. But I think this is a step in the right direction. Now, let's go to the top 25 for junior colleges. See if we have the post here. Okay, we're past it, I think. Okay, we're having trouble. Let me drop this real quick so I can scroll up and see better. All right, here we go. I'll pull this up on the screen for you guys. So we'll go over the D2 rankings, top 25, preseason top 25. So number 1, no surprise, Tampa. What you'll find, guys, that a lot of these, they're spread out pretty evenly. Point Loma, number 5 on the West Coast, Central Missouri, Southern New Hampshire State, Colorado Mesa. So Division II, it's like the rankings are pretty spread out, right? You got Lubbock Christian, Texas at 16, Missouri Southern, Arkansas Monticello, Ashland, Georgia College and State. At 14, number 15, Young Harris, so two Division IIs in Georgia, well represented. I've talked to you guys a bunch about some of these D2s that, really recruit and play better than a lot of Division Is. If you're a guy out there and schools like this are recruiting you guys, just remember, these are great places to go develop, win, learn how to play championship baseball, and ultimately you have the ability now to transfer if you want to. A lot of these Division II schools, like I've told you guys in the past, they don't love that guys are going to be transferring, right? It's just like they're not looking forward to that kids can leave, but they also, the best ones know we want to get the best players. So if they're going to be here for a year or 2 years, we're going to be better than just skipping over guys who they feel like maybe trying to transfer somewhere else. And so, guys, keep in consideration the Division II level in your recruiting process, because now more than ever, and I've talked with I've talked with a few of you guys who follow the streams, follow the videos, who have reached out and wanted to talk about just the current recruiting process from parents who have players that are already committed and are kind of asking, okay, what's the, what should he be thinking now that he's committed to a Power 5 or Power 4 school, or kids that are still in the process. And this is what you have to understand. Talking to one parent who's a follower of the stream, whose son is committed to a big school, I just said, listen, I mean, it's a scary time. If both of my, I have two sons who are very, very young, but I would be scared. I mean, if they were enrolling next year or this year into a Power 4 school, because you really just, there was never a guarantee you were going to play, right? You always had to earn that. But now there's no guarantee you're even going to make it to the season if you don't perform well. And so the advice I gave was, listen, don't take any days off, keep working, make sure you are in the batting cage or pitching and doing your work, and in the weight room every day you can be, getting as physical as you can be, preparing to go into that freshman year. Because like you guys, I've told my story, my senior summer, I had a lot of buddies that were like, hey, I'm committed, I'm going to take the summer off. I've never got a summer really to hang out with my buddies, and ultimately ended up just killing them because they weren't prepared going into that freshman fall and having to prove yourself against, even back then, really good competition at the college level. Now you're competing against not just people in your peer group and your recruiting class, but guys that are coming in who have 400 at-bats under their belt or 150 innings under their belt on the mound. And it's very hard. It's very hard to beat those guys out in positions because they're going to be given so much of the benefit of the doubt because, well, he's performed in the past and he's going to get a shot. What you have to do is you just have to outwork your competition so much every day. Show up to the field early. Hey, can I get some ground balls? Hey, can I get some early hitting in? Anything you can do. Make yourself as versatile as possible. But again, these teams listed here and a lot of others at Division II level are great places to go play, get developed, play championship baseball, must-win baseball, play for the NCAA Division II National Championship. These are places you want to go, okay? So always consider that when you're going through this process because, again, it's harder now more than ever to not just, again, getting to a Division I school is great, but that's not the end goal and shouldn't be your end goal. The end goal should be, as a freshman, getting on the field to play. And if that's not your goal, like I talk to kids all the time and I feel stupid asking the question, but I'm like, is your goal to play in the big leagues? And all of them say yes. And then my next question is, well, what are you doing every day to accomplish that goal? And what decisions are you making now that are going to have the greatest impact on that goal? And I say that because I try to tell these guys, listen, Division I may not be the best route for you. It may not be the best route. You may need to go to a Division II. You may need to go to a lower tier D1 or a JUCO to get that early playing time and prove yourself and start creating a track record that coaches are going to want. And they're going to recruit you to be a guy in their lineup, not just a freshman who's got to prove himself in the fall. Because guys, remember, as a freshman, it doesn't matter what coaches are telling you. When you step on campus, you better show up and you better show them what you can do. And again, you're not going to play unless they think you're one of the best 8 guys on the field as a position player. And you're not going to get innings unless they feel like they can trust. The biggest thing with pitchers, guys, is they have to feel like they can trust what you're going to bring every time you're out there on the mound. If you're really inconsistent and one outing you're throwing strikes and one outing you're walking the house, that's going to do way more than, oh, he gave up a few hits this outing or he gave up a few runs. If you're consistently throwing strikes every outing, they're at least going to know, I can count on this guy to come in and throw strikes. So if we're up by 5 runs, we can bring this guy in. He's not going to walk guys. They're going to have to hit the ball. I think a lot of you guys watch all these videos on social media and think, well, I'm throwing really hard and schools are going to want me. And it's like, yeah, they're going to want you, but they're not going to pitch you unless they feel like you can compete in the strike zone at a high level. From Zach, get playing time. If you're good, scouts will find you. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. There's this really, really bad misnomer out there that like, well, I'm going to a Division II school and scouts aren't going to know who I am. They will know who you are. They will know who you are. The reality is that a lot of Division II kids get drafted every year. Division III kids get drafted. Just a lot of junior college kids get drafted. I think it's something like 20% of Major League Baseball players are former JUCO players. Obviously, the college ranks make up the highest percentage of American-born players. I know Walter Beatty's been talking a lot about the impact that a lot of the international countries are having on American-born players in the big leagues, and what the travel ball system, what that impact is having on players. And I'll talk about it a little bit here briefly. But the reality is, the reason so many people in the U.S. are choosing other sports besides baseball, unfortunately, is because of the expenses that are incurred playing travel baseball, right? As a football player, coaches are doing all their recruiting at high school games for the most part, right? They're not going to watch some travel football league. One, because that would just destroy your body, but it's just way more simple, way less expensive. And in football now in college, you make it to a big Division I school, you're getting paid a lot of money. In baseball, no one gets seen in high school pretty much. I mean, you're getting seen in the travel ball circuit, but because it's so expensive to play travel ball and a high level travel ball, it's pushing a lot of people out of the market of baseball and pushing them to other sports. And so all of a sudden you're seeing, I mean, there's a recent, pretty soon, guys, a lot of Japanese-born players are going to be coming to the States to play in college. We're seeing that already with a few guys, but that's going to continue to increase over the years. And so there's going to be even more competition to play college baseball, not just the portal guys, but you're going to have more international guys playing. I actually spoke with a Korean organization recently who are trying to start a pipeline for players from Korea getting to the States. Now, most of those kids would have to go to junior college from talking to them because of the English barrier and everything like that. And they're working on that right now in Korea as developing the English language learning so that players can acclimate more easily. But that's on the horizon. David Aarons, okay, so there's recruiting and then there's applying for the position. Where is the listing of each college and what positions they're accepting applications for, and have the coach set out specifics? I think I understand what you're saying, David, but maybe clarify a little bit. Zach, and honestly, seems like now in every sport, coaches want players with experience. Seems like they would prefer a D2, D3 JUCO player with experience. I mean, that's undoubtedly the truth, Zach. I mean, it's not that they prefer it. It's like that's what they want. Again, if you're a stud, again, an evaluation is subjective. So, like, some coaches are going to see a kid and think he's really good, and some coaches are going to see the same guy and think he's not as good, right? I was talking to a former Power 4 coach at ABCA, and he was saying he had talked to, at the beginning of the portal, first couple years of the portal, he had talked with coaches who said, oh, well, our strength is still going to be, we're going to recruit mostly high school guys. And he just was thinking, he told me this, he's like, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, good luck with that. I mean, portal guys that come in, they're going to compete. You kind of know what you're getting. High school guys, I've tried to tell you guys this a bunch, but high school guys, like 40% of them that come in a recruiting class, maybe a little bit less than that, end up becoming like true everyday contributors, really good players. And, maybe 10% of them end up being all conference type players. Whereas you go to portal players, they're already proven. So, they're probably 90% of the time going to be contributors or big time players for you. So why would you bring in a bunch of high school kids when you know the majority of them are not ever going to be a contributor for you, and you're spending scholarship money on them, right? So here's the article from D1 Baseball, and this is the top 25, 10 more teams to watch. So these are the teams that D1 Baseball recognized as kind of just outside of the top 25. So we'll look at that now. So Alabama, first on the list. Of course, the SEC teams that didn't make the top 25 are right on the bubble. Obviously, pretty brand new coach Rob Vaughn, who came from obviously a really good program, added a few solid transfers out of the portal, including hard-hitting Miami transfer Jason Torres. Canes is not going to like that. LSU transfer Brady Neal, Garrett Stanton, and Brent Norton are two more powerful additions after they combined for 32 homers, more than 100 RBIs last season for their respective teams. Zane Adams is a strong piece at the front end of the pitching staff, while junior right-handed pitcher Riley Quick, who is now healthy, is one to watch. He's expected to be in the Tide's weekend rotation, and he's a massive arm with an ability to touch triple digits. Alabama might not be as refined on paper as some other SEC teams in their top 25, but the upside is special with this group. So Alabama not quite as polished as the other teams in the top 25, but has as much upside or more than a lot of the teams. Which that's the thing. That's a lot of upside is great. The problem is most of the time, most guys do not reach that upside. They fall somewhere below it. So it's just going to be a question of how much further below do these players hit on their upside versus everything else. David Aarons, save a player's time by having the coaches list the positions they will be recruiting for the next year. Well, David, this is the issue, is even coaches, this is the problem that the portal's created, David, is that coaches really don't know exactly what they're going to lose in the portal too. So they have an idea, okay, these guys are going to get drafted. These are our seniors who don't have any eligibility left. But now we've seen guys can kind of file for an extra year of eligibility, and sometimes they get it. But the problem now is, on average last year, Power 4 schools and really good D1 schools lost anywhere from 7 to 12 players in the portal. On average, it was like 8 or 9. So you really have no idea, even while you're recruiting for, let's say, your 26th class right now. Well, you don't know the guys you're going to lose that 26th season in the portal. So all of a sudden, you may need a few extra high school guys. And this is really the major problem that the portal's caused in recruiting, and why recruiting has slowed down so dramatically, because you just don't know. You may think, oh, these guys love it here, they're not going to leave, and then you lose 5 guys you didn't expect. And then you're like, well, we got to replace 5 guys, so we're going to have to go to the portal for some of those spots. Maybe there's a couple late bloomers in high school that we latch onto and we grab. So it's even coaches, they may have an idea of the positions they'll need, and they may feel like, oh, we're going to go high school guy with this position, and then a really big-time player in the portal pops up and they're able to land him, and now they don't need that high school guy. Or he already committed, but he doesn't really have the spot available to him now. That's the issue for everyone, is you may look at a roster and say, all right, I'm a shortstop, and they're losing their shortstop this year to the draft, and now I'm going to have a spot to compete for, and second base job may be up for grabs too. And boom, they bring in a couple middle infielders in the portal, and now you got serious competition. It's just very hard to have an idea of what's going to look like. Auburn, the Tigers could be one of those clubs that by season's end we're wondering why they weren't in our initial top 25. With that said, there are just too many question marks for now to rank Auburn entering the 25 campaign. We do love the offensive potential with hard-hitting Ike Irish and Cooper McMurray leading the way, while South Florida transfer middle infielder Eric Snow is a solid addition to the roster. Same with East Carolina transfer Bristol Carter, who has a solid track record from an offensive standpoint. Ultimately, Auburn's success hinges on the pitching staff's ability to rise to the occasion under pitching savant Butch Thompson. Florida transfer left-handed pitcher Cade Fisher is up to 92-94 with his fastball and has unbridled potential, while Sam Dutton and freshman Christian Chatterton are two arms with high expectations. Chatterton, a freshman, was up to 93-94 with his heater in the fall with 5 legitimate pitches as part of his arsenal. And this is kind of what I was talking to Carl Nonemaker and Butch Thompson about, before our flight to the ABCA, is they actually really have a good feeling about their team. They do like their offense, talking to Carl. And Butch really said with the pitching staff, he feels like he's got some depth and some high quality arms. Again, it just comes down to, okay, who are the guys that are going to step up in the season? And Butch did talk to me a little bit about, he felt like they may go back to a system where, they have extensive meetings with the pitcher and catcher the week before a start and up to the, obviously before the game, and maybe let the pitcher and the catcher call the game. So we'll have to wait and see about that. But he said, in years past, he had a lot of success with that, and they may go back to that system, though he wasn't sure. College of Charleston, really good mid-major. Never underestimate the motivation of those who were scoring. That's the message of the Cougars entering the 2025 campaign. Chad Holbrook was vocal in the disappointment that College of Charleston missed the NCAA tournament last season. Now the Cougars look to leave zero doubt this season. Fifth-year player Avery Neves headlines the offensive lineup after hitting .338 with 25 doubles and 15 home runs and 44 RBIs last season, while the pitching staff is in great shape with Jake Brink and Aiden Hunter as the top two starting pitchers. So remember, guys, College of Charleston was that bubble team that everyone pretty much assumed was going to make the tournament, and then when University of Florida got in and LSU got in, it kind of kicked them to the curb, and Chad Holbrook was very upset and very disappointed in the decision by the committee to leave College of Charleston out. And I think most people rightly agreed, saying, this team deserved to be in. So a lot of motivation for them to just come out this year and really prove themselves and make the tournament. The Huskies might have something to prove from an offensive standpoint this spring, but conventional wisdom suggests Jim Pender's club will be just as fine as the season progresses. The biggest reason we're bullish on the Huskies is their overall depth and the high upside potential with Josh McDonald's pitching staff. Senior Gabe Van Eman will spearhead the weekend rotation and is a low 90s fastball guy who had solid summer at the Cape Cod League. Senior right-handed pitcher Ian Cook is another experienced piece in the rotation, while fourth-year junior Tommy Ellison is expected to have a monster season. Ellison had an ERA just over 6 and just 19 innings of work last season, but he's a massive upside guy with a fastball up to 96 and a sharp slider. UConn will make some serious noise this spring if the offense steps up. Zach Lesnar, SC teams will always get it in over a mid-major team. Yeah, that's kind of, that's what we've been talking about, Zach. It's the issue is that it's to the SEC and the ACC's credit, really the two super conferences in baseball. There's just so many good teams in those conferences. They're just so deep that you have to, and as a committee, you have to weigh the fact that, these teams are running the gauntlet in conference play, and the conferences are so good. Is a 14-16 or a 13-17 record in conference in those conferences outweigh a mid-major who's had a really good year? That's the issue we're having now, because even when I was playing, the conferences were deep, but you had those 3 or 4 teams at the bottom of the conference that just were not really competitive. Now, that's not really the case. You may have 1 or 2 teams that look like they're kind of outside the rest, but that leaves a bunch of other teams that are all super competitive. And again, even if you think of Boston College did not finish well last year in the ACC, but that was in the first year under Todd Donato, and he's got a specific offense that he needs specific players for. As he recruits those guys to that team and gets the type of players he needs to run his speed offense, I think Boston College is going to make a lot of noise. Just from what I saw last year against Georgia Tech and kind of the magic of that offense and how it was run. Once Boston College gets the pieces it needs, they're going to be, I think, a sleeper every year in the conference, if not just an overall expected team to win every weekend. East Carolina, of course, surprising they didn't make the top 25. The Pirates are flying a little more under the radar than usual this season. That's honestly the way head coach Cliff Godwin likes it with this group. The question marks surrounding this team are more than warranted, with ECU expected to start 6 players in the everyday lineup, either freshmen or sophomores. That's not to say those guys can't have ultra-productive season, but it's a lot on their plate. Dixon Williams and Riley Johnson are the nucleus of the offensive lineup, while ODU transfer Alex Boucher, I hope I'm saying that right, is an interesting breakout candidate. Boucher has shown plenty of power production in the past, but has hit just .241 with 4 homers for the Monarchs last season. Yeah. Hope he's got to make a big jump. I bet he hits for a lot more power than that with CG and co-freshman right-hander Sean Jenkins is one to watch after a strong fall with a fastball up to 96. While transfers Ryan Towers and Brett Antelick are expected to round out the rotation, Towers developed a cutter slider in the fall that should serve him well this spring. while Antelic was up into the upper 90s with his heater in the fall. Ethan Norby, who excelled on the mound as a freshman last season, another key cog. This ECU team has more question marks than any in recent memory, but this group should find its stride as the season progresses. Louisville. Undoubtedly, the Cardinals had a decent amount of turnover during the offseason, but there's still enough talent with this team to make a run to the NCAA tournament this spring. Gone are guys like Gavin Killen and Isaac Humphrey. However, Zion Rose and Eddie King Jr. are two excellent returning hitters. Rose blossomed as a freshman last season, hit .380 with 5 homers and 32 RBIs, while King Jr. is coming off a monster season at the plate, hitting .322 with 7 doubles, 14 homers, and 43 RBIs. Tage Davis is an instant impact freshman to watch. From a pitching standpoint, Patrick Forbes is an older, talented arm who has been through the rigors of the ACC for several seasons, while Indiana State transfer Brennan Cutts is an excellent addition to the staff. Some other departed ISU arms might get more fanfare. But Cutts is coming off a season where he appeared in 18 games, started 16, and had a 3.6 ERA and 83 innings of work. He also struck out 75 and walked 40. Louisville looks like a team that will make some serious noise if the newcomers, particularly from an offensive standpoint, make a quick transition. Zach, why did Gambino leave for Penn State? Seems like a tougher place to win than BC. So, from what I heard, felt like Penn State basically promised to give him a lot of support from the athletic side, financials and everything. And I think from the guys I know who are close to Gambino, felt like he wasn't exactly going to get the same from Boston College. Obviously, he had a great run at Boston College, and I think it was a little bit surprising to leave for Penn State. But that's the information that I have. And obviously, one of our advisors, John Murphy, worked with Gambino at Boston College, and was a part of the some of the really big runs there and recruited some of the really best players that you see now in the big leagues. But that's kind of what the vibe was. That was the feel. Was that Penn State really offered a lot of support to kind of get Penn State baseball to high level. Now, that's not going to be something that happens overnight, right? But that was kind of the reasoning for leaving that I heard. And I think they, obviously paid him well and everything like that. Oklahoma, the Sooners will qualify as an Omaha sleeper in my book. Sure, the Sooners have some question marks from an offensive standpoint. OU welcomes back just one hitter, Jackson Willits, who finished last season with double-digit home runs. However, they added some strong pieces in the portal and in terms of the freshman class. Talented freshman Kyle Branch is one to watch this spring. As uncertain as we are about OU's offense, we're very confident about the Oklahoma pitching staff. It's loaded. Kyson and Malachi Witherspoon are front-end arms in the weekend rotation, while LSU transfer left-handed pitcher Cam Johnson has as much upside as anyone in the country. Junior college transfer arms Cade Crosland and Dylan Tate are two more premium arms to watch. Oklahoma has the upper-end pitching depth to make a big splash on the national stage. We'll see if Reggie Willett's offense can follow suit. Now, that's the what I've been hearing from a lot of the Power 4 and ACC and SEC coaches in particular is that they feel like the path to a winning season is having elite pitching. So talking about Oklahoma, obviously in the SEC now, so they're going to have to run the gauntlet, but they have top-end pitching and an unproven offense. And you feel like now in the offensive environment, you don't need the superstar offense would be great. Everyone wants it, but as long as you have a superstar pitching staff, you feel like you can win every weekend. So I feel like Oklahoma is probably going to end up in the top 25 here soon. But again, the SEC, anything can happen. Every weekend, you're running a gauntlet. Southern Miss, no surprise. Wash, rinse, repeat. Golden Eagles look like another NCAA tournament team that could end the season as a regional host, even though they're not preseason top 25. Southern Miss welcomes back a few key cogs from an offensive standpoint, including fifth-year slugger Carson Pato, while shortstop Ozzie Pratt, who had .317 with 43 RBIs last season, is back, and Matthew Russo and Nick Monastir are also back in the fold. Monastir is a speedy guy who can swipe bases and has power in his bat, while Russo is a fourth-year junior who certainly showed plenty of power last season. Butler transfer Joey Urban is another intriguing bat to watch. Urban hit .332 last season with 15 doubles and 6 homers. Colby Allen and talented freshman Graydon Harris are expected to be in the weekend rotation, while my pick to click for this team is right-handed pitcher J.B. Middleton. Middleton is an electric arm with a fastball up to 97-98 and has more upside than anyone on the staff. The back end of the bullpen is also in solid shape, with Cross Sivley and Josh Ock leading the way. Sibley was outstanding for the Golden Eagles last season, walking just 11 batters and 63 innings of work. Stanford, no surprise. An ACC team. Cardinals, yet another team with a very high ceiling on this list. Dave Esker's club certainly has some question marks from an offensive standpoint, but there's some experience this unit too. As Charlie Somm, Timo Becerra, Court McDonald, and Trevor Haskins are back in the mix. Stanford also has the services of one of the most heralded freshmen in the history of college baseball in Japanese superstar Rintaro Sasaki, like we talked about. Sasaki looks like a surefire superstar, but we'll see how he transitions to Division I baseball. On the mound, there's a lot of promise with junior righty Matt Scott back, while Christian Lim is coming off a solid freshman campaign. And Joey Volko has an electric arm. Volko has the upside of any weekend starter, has the most upside of any weekend starter, and becomes a starter after splitting duties last season. I'd also expect a guy like Nick Dugan to have a bounce-back season. Dugan has upside, but did finish last season with an ERA higher than 6, along with the .301 opponent batting average. There will be a transition period going into the ACC, but this looks like a team ready for the challenge. And remember, guys, Stanford made its money kind of dominating the Pac-12, and what a lot of people don't understand is the Pac-12 had really lost its luster over the last 5 or 6 years. It was not a deep conference. You had, your UCLAs, your Stanfords, and Oregon State, and Oregon. But really outside of that, it was kind of like teams were either good for a year and then really bad for a year. And so it was not nearly as deep as the ACC, the SEC, or the Big 12. And last year alone, the Sun Belt had a higher overall RPI as a conference than the Pac-12. So that just goes to show you that really the depth of the conference was not there anymore. Zach, it's insane to think Stanford is in the ACC. It'll be interesting to see how the travel affects them this year. Yeah, that is going to be weird. And I know for a lot of things, they were talking about, having teams meet at a neutral ground in Texas. I don't know if they're going to do that for baseball. Again, I doubt it. But the travel is going to be a factor. Traveling east is also always way harder than traveling west. So that's an advantage for all the East Coast teams in the ACC. As someone who, when I played in the Pacific Coast League in AAA, whenever you traveled to Fresno or Vegas or Reno or Tacoma or Sacramento and all these teams on the West Coast or near the West Coast, it was not hard to make that transition. But when you traveled, if you had to go from the West Coast to a New Orleans or a Round Rock or a Nashville, which the PCL encompasses all of that. If you didn't know, at least it was called the PCL. It's not that anymore. But you would have teams in Nashville. You had teams all the way in Tacoma, Washington. So the travel west is always easier because you're gaining hours of sleep. Essentially, you could travel west and then you still have plenty of hours to sleep and adjust. Whereas if you're traveling east, you're losing all those hours. It'll be interesting to see how teams like Cal and Stanford adjust to that, because if they're on the road and going to East Coast, that's a big adjustment. West Virginia, Steve Sabins is expected to have a solid club in his first season as head coach. There's a solid foundation from an offensive standpoint. Logan Suave, Grant Hussey, and Sam White back in the mix. Suave hit .308 with 8 homers last season. Hussey has plenty of swing and miss, but has big-time power in his bat. And White hit .305 with 10 homers and 42 RBIs last season. The Mountaineers also added a solid transfer bat in Manhattan kickback Chase Swain. Swain can play various positions on the field and hit .392 with 5 homers, 41 RBIs for the Jaspers last season. West Virginia has a lot to prove on the mound, but there's potential to have an elite staff. Chase Meyer is up to the 96-97 with his fastball and is moving to the Friday night role after making 13 appearances last season. That's a big jump, while Carson Estridge and Griffin Kern are expected to round out the rotation. Estridge has been up to 93-94 with his fastball with command of several pitches, while Kern is a D2 transfer with an outstanding track record. He has a solid fastball, good command of the slider and changeup. The X factor for this team is closer Robbie Porco. Porco has struggled in the past, but has an electric arm that nears triple digits. If he can throw strikes and be consistent, the sky's the limit for the talented righty. So, that is teams outside of the top 25 that D1 baseball kind of felt like were on the fringe. Now, Perfect Game had their top 40. Obviously, some other SEC and ACC schools in there as well, like Georgia Tech and Miami. Those teams are probably just outside of this, which would make it, top 35. Again, talking to Georgia Tech's coaching staff, they feel like, listen, they have perhaps the best player in college baseball in the middle of the order in Drew Burris. a lot of talented young guys on the pitching staff. So Georgia Tech feels like they're going to be a sleeper in the ACC this year. They're going to, James Ramsey offense has always been very, very good, even if the coaching staff felt like going the season. I remember a few years ago talking to James, he told me, as a staff, we voted, all right, where do we think we'll finish offensively in the ACC? And they thought about middle of the pack, 7th or 8th. And they ended up finishing in the top 1 or 2. So James Ramsey offense has what he has proven as a hitting coach is that he can create run scoring offenses. The big question mark for Georgia Tech is a bunch of really good young arms that they felt like performed really well in the fall. Are they going to be able to transition to ACC play and perform at a high level like they did in the fall? That's the question mark for Georgia Tech. And we've talked about Miami in the past. So those are the interesting articles I was able to see about some of this stuff. Now, here's the other thing, guys. One of the things I wanted to talk about today, and I have a video coming out about it tomorrow. I have another video coming out today, another kind of secret I learned in my pro career. I had the video out yesterday about things I learned in my college career and going through that struggle my sophomore year that really helped me understand perspective and attitude and kind of how setting the right goals and the wrong goals can really impact your year. If you haven't checked that out, go check it out on our YouTube page. But I have another video coming out today of things I learned in my professional career that probably too late in my career that can help you. But one of the things I'm going to talk about tomorrow is just how we're now in this day and age where so many people in the baseball world think batting average doesn't matter. It's not a good stat, doesn't really show you any kind of value. And again, how ridiculous is that notion? I don't know if you guys may agree, you may not agree. But how ridiculous is it that batting average is not valuable? And I'll give you a situation where that it just proves it completely wrong. And you can apply this to a bunch of different situations, but this is kind of the one where it's undeniable. 9th inning, you're down by 1, 2 outs, runner at second. So tying run at second. Do you prefer the 240 hitter with a 35% strikeout rate, but a 900 OPS, or the 305 hitter with a 15% strikeout rate and a 790 OPS? What do you guys think? Who do you want up in that situation? Who do you want up? Which guy do you want up? The 305 hitter who doesn't strike out, or the 245 big OPS, 35 to 40% strikeout machine? It's a pretty easy answer, I think, right? It's a pretty easy answer, I think. I know who I would go with. I would go with the high average guy, because he's got a higher percentage chance to get a base hit and bring that run home, right? And this is kind of the thing that's taken over Major League Baseball, and you see all these teams, and huge discussion about it on social media all the time. You see all these teams that kind of build their lineup around a bunch of 240 hitters that hit 25 home runs but have 40 RBIs, and they have high OPS, but at the end of the year, how much value did that high OPS bring? Yeah, he hit 25 home runs, but he only drove in 45 runs. Right? Because again, another stat that everyone thinks is useless, RBIs. And in my video that comes out, because I could be wrong, but it seems like OPS is valued more than batting average in the big leagues. When you watch an MLB game, they don't even show batting average, they just show OPS. You're right, Zach. You're 100% right. That was one of the reasons why I never got a shot in the big leagues. I was not a high OPS guy. I was a high batting average, high on base percentage player. But I was not a slugger by any means. And part of that was my swing. I had a steeper swing that when I made hard contact, it was a low line drive or a ground ball, which hurt my OPS because I had more power in me. I'd made a change too late in my career, but ended up, hitting for more power while I was in indie ball, and then just couldn't get a job after that season. But the problem with OPS is this, Zach, and this is kind of this is the fallacy in the argument, is that what a lot of these new analytics guys believe is that, well, OPS shows your extra base hits, your extra bases, and if you're hitting for extra bases, you're driving in more runs. But that's not exactly the case, because there's so many hitters, especially in the big leagues, who hit like I said, 230, and they hit 30 home runs, and at the end of the year they drove in like 55 runs. So would you rather, and this is a great question too, would you rather have like a Don Mattingly type player who didn't hit a lot of home runs as a first baseman in the big leagues, but he always hit over 300 and drove in a lot of runs? So would you rather have that high OPS player that drives in 55 runs, or the lower OPS player that drives in like 100? And of course, you would take the guy who's going to drive in a lot of runs, because the number one stat you should be looking at is runs scored and runs driven in, because those are what win games. OPS doesn't win a game. You win a game by scoring more runs than the other team. And so what we've done in the big leagues is, and again, guys, this is something we can talk about forever, but we've incentivized guys chasing high OPS instead of chasing run creation and run production. And again, we have stats like weighted runs created, but why don't we just look at the amount of runs they created themselves in the season? Right, that's what I just don't understand. And listen, there are guys I know and I played with who have not great batting average, but are very high run production, high OPS players. Right, there are guys that hit 240 every year with 30 jacks, but they drive in around 100 runs and they score a lot of runs. Those guys are valuable. But if you have a whole lineup of those guys, eventually they're going to run into a cold streak, and you're not going to be able to beat a single team. And with the game on the line in the ninth inning, you want a guy on your team at the plate who's got a high average, who's going to put the ball in play, get a base hit, and bring the run in. And what you see in the playoffs are the teams with actually the best hitters, not just the best OPSs, are the ones that are winning. Right? The teams with the guys that actually can hit. And, unfortunately, look at what the Dodgers are doing this offseason, but you think about the players on the Dodgers offense, like Mookie Betts, high batting average, high OPS. Freddie Freeman, high batting average, high OPS. Those are the real superstars, because in crunch time, they don't have one tool in their tool belt. They can't just run into a home run every once in a while. They can also flick a single into left to bring the run in. And so again, I do think baseball, you will see a shift soon. Not totally away from OPS, because that is I get it, that is a stat that can show you value. But just like the argument was made that there's guys with an empty batting average who they hit for a high average, but they don't drive in runs, they don't score a lot of runs, they don't steal bases, they don't hit for a lot of power. Listen, I get it. I still think that guy's valuable, but he may not be as valuable as people think. But just like that, there are also a lot of players who their OPS is telling you a story that's really not true. Right? If you're OPSing 850, but you're not driving in a lot of runs, you're not really bringing a lot of value to the team. And I'll also give you this example. Who would a pitcher rather face in that situation in the ninth inning? A 230 hitter with a high OPS with a 40% strikeout rate, or a 30 to 35% strikeout rate, or a 305 hitter with a 10 to 15% strikeout rate? They'd rather face the high OPS guy, because that guy is going to strike out in 35% of his at-bats, and he is pitchable. Meaning there's holes in his swing. There's places they can go that he can't cover. Whereas the high batting average guy doesn't mean he doesn't have any holes, but generally speaking, the holes are a lot smaller. He's a lot harder to pitch to, and he can get a hit even on a really good pitch made by the pitcher. That's what we've lost in Major League Baseball. And really, guys, when you see all these old school guys like Jeff Fry, who I agree with some of the stuff he says, I don't agree with everything, but I do think he has a lot of valid points to say. When you see these old guys talking about how the game used to be and how part of the game now has gotten worse, and how they're voicing their hatred for analytics and what it's done to baseball, they're not really haters of the analytics, because the analytics themselves are just telling you objective truth that kind of old school baseball guys have been able to see with their eyes forever. What they're really arguing against and what they hate is that the sport of baseball for the longest time was viewed as a piece of art. And the sport of baseball has been turned from a piece of art into a mathematical equation, into science. And so you've taken away that beauty and kind of mystery of the art that they were such big fans of. And now you've turned it, and again, you've turned it into this, well, guys, I promise you, this is how a lot of Major League Baseball operating leads, head of baseball operations, this is how they work now. They just put these players into a AI model. And basically, if the AI model says, yeah, you trade him for this guy, or yeah, call this guy up, that's what they do. That's how a lot of decisions are made. And then the question becomes, well, why are you paying these guys a lot of money if all their decisions are being made by a computer, essentially? That's the question. And that's the reason you're seeing these guys that have never played a position before playing that position in the big leagues. And, you know, a lot of these guys are getting called up to the big leagues, and you look at their track record in the minor leagues and you're like, why does anyone think this guy's going to have a lot of success in the major leagues? It's just like pitchers and teams using spin rate more than focusing on command. Yeah, it's exactly that. And again, there is this false statement out there that, man, the reason there's so many strikeouts and the batting average has gone down in the major leagues is because pitchers are so much better now. And that's just your fan who's never played at the high level telling you that. Because that's what the higher ups in baseball, the operating level, are saying. It's not the case. I mean, I played at the highest level. I played in big league camp against big league pitchers. I played against a lot of big league pitchers in AAA. The stuff is good, don't get me wrong. It's really good. But the reason guys are striking out so much is because there's no incentivization to not strike out. They're actively told, hey, strikeouts aren't a big deal. Like, don't worry about striking out. It's just you hit doubles, hit homers. That's it. And like you said, Zach, more than focusing on command, yeah, pitchers are told the same thing. It's like, throw as hard as you can, have the highest spin rate. And I mean, big league pitchers are working on command, right? But there is less emphasis now on being a command guy. It's something really hard to develop. It's probably the hardest thing for a pitcher to develop is elite command. But think about it like this, guys. Back in the day when everyone says, oh, the pitchers were way worse and velocity was, one, the guns weren't quite as accurate. So velocity was not recorded as high as it really was as it would be today. That's a fact. Secondly, the strike zones were this big in the big leagues now. I mean, they were this big. So a lot of these hitters who everyone says, well, the pitchers weren't as good. Well, maybe they weren't quite as good. But the strike zones, we've seen the videos of the Florida Marlins Livan Hernandez game where, I mean, umpires are calling it 5 inches. The umpire's calling it 5 inches off the plate, and guys like Chipper Jones are just kind of looking at it and like, he got me. They're not even arguing the call because that was the reality in the big leagues then. Now the strike zone, if you're a hitter in the big leagues, the strike zone's a tin cup. I mean, it's like this big. Those umpires are so. I mean, besides some of the old school umpires that like Angel Hernandez and everything, we know the names. Besides those guys, Junior Valentine, who I had in AAA, who, again, he was an umpire in AAA, and of all the crews in that league, I thought he was one of the not as good umpires, and somehow he's a big league umpire now. So that makes sense. But most of these umpires now in the big leagues, especially the young guys, I mean, their zones are this tight. So as a hitter, sure, the stuff is better generally speaking, in a very marginal level. But the strike zone's tighter in the big leagues than it's ever been. So you don't have to defend against the 2 inches off the plate strike. You don't have to defend against the inch down below the plate strike. You really have as tight of a strike zone as it's ever been. So in some ways, the stuff has gotten slightly better, but the strike zone's gotten much smaller, which should be an equalizer, right? And like I know a lot of guys out there think, well, I mean, guys are throwing harder, and it's like, dude, the difference to a high-level professional hitter in like 94, 96, and 97, 99, it's not that big of a difference. It's really not. And it's all in how you see the pitch. I faced guys that threw 100 and it looked like 92. And I faced guys that threw 92 and it looked like 100. So just because it says 100 on the gun doesn't mean that it looks like 100 to the hitter at the plate. But I think I think one thing that is undervalued are the guys who hit for a high batting average in the minor leagues. They're extremely undervalued, extremely. And that doesn't mean they're going to have big time success at the big league level, but certainly you want a few of those guys in your lineup, right? You need guys that'll get on base. You need guys that can get on base so they can be hit in. They can be driven in by the guys behind them. Anyways, that's my soapbox for the day. But check out that video that's coming out tonight, guys. Remember, if you're looking for help in the recruiting process, scan this QR code right here. Fill out the form, and one of our advisors or myself will meet with you. If you're looking for just an hourly consulting, maybe you're a young kid and you're looking kind of, hey, what steps do I need to start taking now to prepare myself for the recruiting process as middle school or whatever, and I'm a few years away, but what are you thinking? Scan this QR code. And if you're looking for an arm care program, an arm program that's going to develop your velocity, develop your accuracy, make your arm more durable, scan this QR code to get that. It's one I used myself, and every player I've used with has not only gained velocity, but accuracy and durability. I used to have elbow pain my whole life. Didn't have a good arm. I threw 78 from the outfield as a high school junior. By the time I started doing this program, I went from a 40 grade arm on the 20/80 scale professionally, which is way below average, to a 60, which is well above average. So that was in like a couple months of doing the program. So this is something that can really help you out. But guys, thanks for joining the stream. Again, had some stuff going on that I had to attend, so I had to start it a little bit later. So a little bit shorter stream today, but we'll be back again tomorrow. Be on the lookout for that video coming tonight about the things I learned in my professional career that can help you now that I wish I had done earlier.